Tonight, our topic is on cancer, and our presenter will be Dr. Keith Henry. Now, we've been indicating to you that each night, if you come out diligently every night or bring the most visitors or guests, you're eligible to have one of these wonderful cookbooks, 7 Secrets Cookbook or the Optimal Diet. I know you would just love to have that. Right? Say right. Yep. Yes. Okay. Well, I want you to enjoy, get your paper and pen ready, be ready to write down everything that you need. Now, remember, you have to register at the front desk in order to be eligible for these books, okay? Welcome once again, and I'm sure we will all be blessed. Thank you so much.
Good evening.
Good evening.
As we indicated this evening, our topic is cancer, but we start off as we do every night, or as we have every night, with a hands-on. Now, what I had intended to do for hands-on is a little bit different than what I'm going to do, because we had to move here into the sanctuary. And so I do something that many of us here that I see or that are here already are already familiar with, but it still didn't hurt to reinforce it. And that is what we do. Again, we were trying to find what we can do in acute situations. And in this instance, we're going to look at, and also need a volunteer who's going to have a heart attack. And this one will be relatively quick because we have a lot of information to cover tonight. And okay. How does it work? Okay. We're going to have for demonstration purposes. Yeah. All right. Now, what we were going to do something again a little different, but we're going to say he's at church, or he's at work, or he's wherever, and he is stricken by a heart attack. Now, in some cases, he may just show the signs or the symptoms. He may grab his heart, or he actually may pass out. And I just so happen to have something in my pocket. I just so happen to have something in my pocket. It's called cayenne. Now, to be able to render this heart attack ineffective, it needs to be about at least 90,000 heat units. It has to be at least 90,000 heat units. Okay, so he's having a heart attack, and I need to get this cayenne. Now, I'm going to give him a couple of drops. I'm not going to give him the same amount that I would give him if he was having an actual heart attack. If he was having an actual heart attack, I would give him an entire, probably 2 of these. Now, this cayenne that I have here is 180,000 heat units. And this is where I'm only going to give him a couple of drops. So I just have here, so he's having a heart attack, and we're going to assume that he is conscious. If in fact he's conscious, I'll tell him, hold his head, his mouth, lift your tongue up. I'm going to put it underneath your tongue. Put it up here. Just hold your head. I think I didn't get enough. I just put a couple of drops for demonstration purposes. And in about 60 seconds, he should be okay. You can call 911, and but that will, in practically all cases, save his life, stop the heart attack until you can get further medical help. Well. Thank you. Yes. Huh? Oh, it's happened in about 60 seconds. The question was, how long does it take to notice the difference from the time that you put it in, right? About 60 seconds. Actually, sometimes you can, if you put enough, you can see a person's face turn red in 30 seconds because the blood it's dilating the blood vessels, and it's just. But remember, it has to be at least 90,000 heat units. 45,000 heat units is not enough. Heat units. Our cayenne pepper has what's called heat units. That indicates how hot it is. And the heat units has to be at least 90,000 to stop a heart attack. And this is 180,000. And this is 180,000, and even if you have the powdered cayenne, if it's at least at least 90,000, if the person is coherent, you can just put a teaspoon in warm water and give it to them. But if they're, I think this is because it's more convenient. If it happens to someone, in church or at work, I can just pull it out of my pocket and give it to them. This therapy has actually over years saved the lives of many people. And so it is a good idea to always keep some on hand. Some cayenne pepper. Yeah, 90,000 and above. It goes all the way up to 200 and probably 50,000. That's the highest that I've seen. 250,000 heat units. That's hot. And another thing, just in passing, cayenne has a lot of uses. One use I've seen some people use is like in the wintertime when it's cold, they put a pinch of cayenne in their socks and it keeps their feet warm, of the powdered cayenne. But it is definitely something that you want to have for first aid. Now tonight we have a lot of information to cover, and it's a very, very important subject. And cancer is one of the most feared diseases, and rightly so, if you're taking the wrong approach. Now, current statistics show that the likelihood that one of us will get cancer is about 50%. In fact, we all have cancer cells in our bodies. And as you look at the studies on cancer, even when you look at the current modes which we have of detecting cancer, the issue is by the time it's detected with the technology that we have now, you already have it. And it's usually, by the time it's detected now, has been growing in your body for years. And so usually if you go, you get a mammogram or X-ray, and they say, oh, we identified cancer. It's usually been growing already for years. The immune system kills cancer cells daily. And if you keep your immune system up to par, you've already been given a cure for cancer. Now, that immune system fights day in and day out. And we never know about the battles that go on. And as long as your immune system is strong, everything is fine. You never know about the battle. But if your immune system becomes severely compromised, you find out about it in the hospital. This is a Newsweek article from a couple of years back. It says, cancer is on track to kill 565,650 people in the United States this year, which was 2008. More than 1,500 people a day, equivalent to 3 jumbo jets crashing and killing everyone aboard 365 days a year. So cancer, now this was in 2008, kills the equivalent of an entire jumbo jet crashing every day for 365 days. So you see, the likelihood that you and I are going to end up with cancer is pretty good. Almost 4 decades ago, Richard Nixon signed the National Cancer Act of 1971, and the war on cancer began. The so-called war on cancer is not only a dismal failure, but has also become an outright lie, perpetuated by big business. Not only are more people dying of cancer than ever before, but more people are getting cancer at earlier ages than ever before. That's from naturalnews.com, an article called War on Cancer is a Dismal Failure. Continuing on with that Newsweek article, it said, since 1971, the federal government, private foundations, and companies have spent roughly $200 billion on the quest for cures. That money has bought us an estimated 1.5 million scientific papers containing an extraordinary amount of knowledge about the basic biology of cancer. So, the basic biology of cancer is already understood. It's not something that's shrouded in mystery. But the way that we're approaching it shows, as what she says, a disconnect between the bench and the bedside, between what science has discovered about cancer and how doctors treat it. Biologists have known for at least 2 decades that it is the rare cancer that can be completely cured through surgery. Nevertheless, countless proud surgeons keep assuring countless anxious patients that they got it all. Now you're going to see some pretty astounding admissions in some of these clips. And what I'm trying to impress upon your mind is that you must think differently about cancer and disease overall. Because right now we think differently than we need to think about cancer. And until our mindsets are changed, then if we come down with cancer, or if one of our loved ones come down with cancer, our general mentality is going to be to go the way that it's always been. And if you go that way, there's a very, very, very good chance that you're not going to make it. Now let's look at some honest admission by some medical doctors. Some 35 years of intense effort focused on improving treatment must be judged as a qualified failure. That's from the New England Journal of Medicine. Now there was a study done in 1985, and they found that, and it's a huge study, that chemotherapy, for instance, is only effective in only 2 to 3% of any cancers, and the ones that it's only effective in are these here. And it's only somewhat effective. 2 to 3% of all cancers. Now, usually when we get cancer or one of our loved ones get cancer, the first thing that we say is chemotherapy, radiation, or what? Surgery. But the science says, now this science is not from natural doctors. This is from medical doctors. Their science tells us that chemotherapy is only effective, somewhat effective, in 2 to 3% of all cases. Another medical doctor explains, for most of today's common solid cancers, the ones that cause 90% of the cancer deaths each year, chemotherapy has never proven to do any good at all. So why is there so much emphasis on something that their reports and their studies show have proven to do very little good at all? Evidence has steadily occurred that cancer therapy is essentially a failure. And you can see the sources there on the screen. We have given it our best effort for decades, billions of dollars of support, the best scientific talent available. It hasn't paid off. Surgery, radiation therapy, and chemotherapy seldom produce a cure. Now, who is that from? The American Cancer Society. They're telling you they don't work. It says chemotherapy, radiation, and surgery seldom produce a cure. Now, I'm glad I have this quote, and I'm glad that they said it and I didn't. Because if I said that, you guys, oh, this guy's a quack, get out of here with that. But they said it. Even oncologists say no to chemo. If you read the studies on it, the studies that I've read on it, about 95% of oncologists, when asked and surveyed if they had to take it or if they had to give it to their family members, would they take it? The majority of them say no. So if I go to an oncologist and he recommends chemotherapy to me, and he wouldn't take it, or he wouldn't have one of his loved ones take it, why should I take it? That's the oath that doctors take. It's called the Hippocratic Oath. I will use treatment to help the sick. I will never use it to injure them or wrong them. I will not give poison to anyone. Is chemotherapy poison? That's a hand where chemo has been spilled on. Now, if chemotherapy does this, if it was spilled on your hand, what does it do to your organs inside? Yes, it kills cancer cells, but it also kills pancreatic cells, brain cells, colon cells, spleen cells, small intestine cells, gallbladder cells, liver cells, on and on and on. If it does that to your hand, pretty amazing, huh? Now, this is a study done or compiled of every randomized controlled clinical trial from 1990 to 2004 on chemotherapy. All of them. And they wanted to see how effective it was over a 5-year period. Because you see, in medicine, the basic idea is that unless you've been shown to be free from cancer for 5 years, it's not regarded as a cure. So using that standard, I'm going to use that standard that they use. And if you look at all of the studies from chemotherapy, this is what was the results. How effective is it on the bladder? 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Other ones? Now, generally in medicine, in traditional medicine, if there is not if whatever therapy that you're taking, if the success rate is under 30%, they consider it no more effective than a placebo. So if you use that standard, what they're saying is chemotherapy is no more effective than a placebo in most cases. Now, the very few cancers that it does work in are, and when I say work, I mean it has some positive benefit to an extent. And these are cancers that are not really they don't occur that frequently. And even here, that's below 50%. So you don't have even a 50% chance of survival. So they just said if it's less than 30%, it's considered no more effective than a placebo. Now, Abraham Lincoln said you can fool some of the people all the time and all the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. George Bush said you can fool some of the people all the time, and those are the ones you want to concentrate on. So we're going to see how we've been concentrated upon with regard to some of these therapies. What you just saw there was when you compare a relative benefit to the absolute benefit in medicine. It's very important when you look at studies or when they advertise, there's a new drug on the market, and it was found to be effective in 50% of the cases. But what they don't tell you is that is not an absolute benefit. That is what's called a relative benefit. And so what happens is, if you actually read the study and find out how did they come to that conclusion, say for instance there's a study of 100 people. They do a trial of 100 people. And in this study, 2 of those people are expected to get cancer out of the 100. Okay? 2 are expected to get cancer out of the 100. But in the study, only 1 gets cancer. Only 1 person gets cancer. So they will report the benefit. They will say, well, we expected 2 to get cancer, but only 1 got cancer, so that's a benefit of 50%. But wait a minute, there were 100 people in the study. Well, they may not tell you that, they'll just say 100 people. But they may not tell you that only 2 were expected to get cancer anyway. And so when you read the study, it'll say, there was 100 people in the trial, but they don't tell you only 2 were expected to get cancer, and of the 2, only 1 got cancer. And they have to report it as a 50% benefit, a relative benefit, because if they told you the absolute benefit, it would be 1 out of 100. And that could just be purely chance. So when you read the studies, when you say, this drug does this and that drug does that, or if you go to the doctor and he recommends you should get this, ask him what is the absolute benefit as opposed to the relative benefit. And I would also suggest that you get the studies, because we've already seen, I just showed you of all the studies that have been done for over the period of how long was it? A number of years, right? That of all of the cancers, chemotherapy is not effective except in a very, very small number of them. Tamoxifen. Anybody ever hear of tamoxifen? A drug for breast cancer, right? Did you know that tamoxifen is also so toxic? I remember reading this some years ago when there was a big thing in the newspapers about it. It's very, very toxic, and in the studies it showed that it causes liver cancer and it causes uterine cancer. So basically, if I'm a female and I have breast cancer, I'm going to take tamoxifen, and I may exchange it for uterine or liver cancer. To me, that's not logical. Because it came out, and even in the studies, they said, "Oh, this is what it does." And if you look at tamoxifen, they reported in the papers that it was like a 49% benefit if you take it. That was based on the relative number. If you look at the study, and you actually look at the real study, and you find out what was the real benefit, the true absolute benefit was 1.5%. Most people, if they were given this information with regard to the relative benefit as opposed to the absolute benefit, would choose not to take it when they weigh it against the risk. Lung cancer survival, and again, look at the numbers. They reported that one particular drug for lung cancer increased survival by 23%. The problem was that was the relative benefit. In reality, your survival actually increased from 10.2 months to 12.5 months, an absolute benefit of 2.3 months. So when they begin to play with these numbers, again, ask about the relative benefit as opposed to the absolute benefit. Here's another one, a drug for recurring breast cancer. They reported it in the newspapers. Oh, it's a wonder drug. This. Come to find out, this is what they were reporting. A 46% decrease in recurring breast cancer. That's what they were reporting. 46% decrease. The problem is what? It's the relative benefit. This is the real benefit. Less than 1%. 0.6%. Now, right now on the market, they say women always get regular mammograms. They will reduce, or 20% of women who have regular mammograms will live longer, they say. Now, you have to understand there are some potential side effects to even getting regular mammograms. And remember, by the time cancer can be picked up by mammogram, guess what? It's been growing in your body for years. Now, I would say there's nothing wrong with going to get tests to find out what you have. But this idea about getting regular mammogram, just understand, if you choose to do it, that there's a risk. And this is what they're reporting. The relative benefit as opposed to the actual benefit of getting these mammograms. The absolute benefit is what? Now, these are their studies, not mine. A truthful account of the facts must be available to the public. It will not be what they want to hear. Now, this is a former commissioner of the FDA. Look at what he said. The thing that bugs me is that people think the FDA is protecting them. It isn't. What the FDA is doing and what the public thinks it's doing are as different as night and day. The National Cancer Institute, with enthusiastic support from the American Cancer Society, has effectively blocked funding for research and clinical trials on promising non-toxic alternative cancer drugs for decades. See what happens here? They have a conspiracy going on here. I know of no better word to use. To where there's a lot of money that's made in the cancer industry, and so what happens is that you've had people you've probably never heard of. You've heard of Hotsy. There was also wait a minute. Most of you have Back to Eden or have heard of Back to Eden, right? If you read Back to Eden, Jethro Kloss was curing cancer back then. Yep. If you have the book, when you get home, look under the cancer section, Back to Eden. Jethro Kloss was curing cancer back then. But what has happened over the years is that many of these cancer, natural or alternative cancer practitioners are either shut down and they're driven out of the country. In fact, most of them are driven down to Mexico. So you have a lot of really good cancer clinics right across the border, down in past Southern California, right across the border, Tijuana. You have a lot of those places that have gone down. A lot of Americans that have gone down, natural doctors, herbalists and whatnot, and they've had to set up cancer clinics down there to be able to practice without being molested by the government. Now, it seems to me, and as I said the other night, if we live in a free country, right, you and I should be able to choose whether or not we wish to go to the conventional doctor, or whether or not we wish to go to a naturopathic doctor, or a herbalist, or a homeopath, or whoever we wish to go to. Because if we're paying for it, we should be able to choose, right? But if it's a medical doctor or a naturopathic doctor chooses to treat cancer with anything else besides radiation, drugs, or chemotherapy, even if it's a medical doctor, he risks losing his license and being thrown in prison. Now we look at cancer's most feared nemesis. You know what that is? Whole plant foods. Whole plant foods have fiber, antioxidants. They're miscellaneous cancer fighters. They're low in fat, no cholesterol, low protein, low toxins, no hormones. Animal refined foods, here you have the other side. An immune system. Remember I said earlier, we already have a cure for cancer? The cure for cancer is your immune system. So as a natural practitioner, you zero in on two things. First, you clean the trash out of the body. Because as Dr. Morgan mentioned, you have to look at the pH balance. And if that pH is acid, then all of these things can grow and multiply. I had someone call me today that I saw last week. Everything she eats, she has a reaction to it, allergic reaction. Everything. And the reaction is so bad to her throat swells, like she can't swallow. She has an allergic reaction to almost everything except water. I saw her a couple of weeks ago, and she's at wit's end because she says the medical doctors, they don't know what to do. There's nothing else they can do because from their perspective, there's no cure for allergies. So today she called me because one of the things I recommended her, once I talked with her and I asked her, what is your bowel movements like? What are your bowel movements like? She said, I only go once or twice a week. That was the first indication that the problem was constipation. Now, for her to be that constipated, she's into a state of auto-intoxication probably where the feces and the trash of her colon is beginning to spill over into her bloodstream. And you can become so, and I've even talked to nurses at the hospital, they've seen people so backed up with constipation that they've been brought to the hospital because it's coming out of their mouths. Now, there's a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Schultz. Many of you may have heard of him. He mentions babies being born with it coming out of their mouths because their mothers were so constipated. And so constipation, one of the first things that you have to look at is the colon. How is the colon? How is the health of the colon? How's the evacuation doing? Because if you're not evacuating, you are actually poisoning yourself. And especially in cancer, that's one of the things that has to be done. The chief thing is that colon has to be cleaned. Has to be. Secondly, the liver has to be clean. Thirdly, the blood has to be clean, in that order. Then, you can start doing some other things with herbs and other things as well. But the thing is, basically, you're pulling out the trash and then re-energizing the body with nutrients. Because you don't have a deficiency of chemotherapy. Neither do you have a deficiency of radiation. But without those nutrients in your body, your body cannot function. And so, with the young lady, she called me back today. I recommended that she start doing a series of enemas and start on some probiotics. And she called me today. She said, "Hey, I had a question." I said, "What's the question?" She said, "There's something in the toilet, and I'm kind of worried." I said, "What does it look like?" She said, "It looks like two strings, and they're clear." And I said, she said, I was worried because I thought maybe, some of my intestines were coming out. I said, "No, those sound like parasites." I said, "How?" I said, "Do they look like spaghetti, somewhat like spaghetti?" She's like, "Yeah." She said, "But they're clear." I said, "Yeah, you're probably passing parasites." And I said, it's very important because if you have a lot of parasites, they will eat your nutrients. And if they eat your nutrients, the nutrients that your body needs, when you eat other foods, you have to have other nutrients to help metabolize the food. And if you don't have the nutrients to help metabolize the food, then she's having allergic reactions to the food that she eats. That can also become about by eating too fast, and some of the other things that we've talked about. But a good diet multiplies immune system cells. Now, a study was done, and in this study, they had people who had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, one of the most deadly cancers there is. In fact, once they tell you you have pancreatic cancer, you are on a time clock. You remember Michael Landon? That's what he died from, pancreatic cancer. I think he was, what was it, Little House on the Prairie and some other show he had with angels or something? Oh, Bonanza? And he died, of pancreatic cancer. But I think he was dead in maybe 4 months after he was diagnosed? Or maybe 2 months. I don't remember what it was now. But they did a study where they had two groups of people. They all had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And in this study, they told one group, just keep eating the way you are, the typical American diet. The SAD diet is what they call it. Just keep eating the way you are. And within 1 year, almost all of them were dead. 99% of them were dead. Your diet plays a very, very, very significant role in the formation of cancer, heart disease, all of your chronic diseases. Your diet is the fundamental thing that you have to look out for. Now, the other group who had a moderately healthy diet, didn't even go as extreme maybe as I would have gone, but they had a moderately healthy diet, and 52% of them were alive after 1 year, and it was basically a plant-based diet. That's with pancreatic cancer. That's pretty significant, don't you think? One group, 99% are dead. The other group, 52% are still alive. That's more than half, isn't it? Now, the National Cancer Institute study published the results of a study of women in 1996 who had tested positive for breast cancer. Half of the women, again, stayed on their typical SAD American diet. The other half went on a plant-based diet. 40% on the typical American diet had recurrences of breast cancer. 40% of them. In other words, this is why anytime you go to a natural practitioner, he or she, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, once they, do a assessment, they're going to tell you you have to change your diet. Because normally when people end up with these types of problems, now it's not only diet, but diet is you get stress is a role. There's other things that play a role. Exercise, all the things that we talked about. But diet is a fundamental factor. 40% of these women on a typical diet had recurrences of breast cancer. So say, for instance, you've been diagnosed with breast cancer. They give you chemotherapy. They find no more cancer in your body. You say, yeah, and you go back to eating the same way you were eating before. There's a very good chance that you are going to end up with a recurrence. Of the women who went to the plant-based diet, what was the occurrence? 0. 0. That's pretty significant. That's 2 examples that we've seen that's been very significant, yes? Now, it's interesting now, as you can see, these statistics here come from WebMD. They had women who did nothing but eat flaxseed muffins. And eating flaxseed muffins were found to be just as effective as tamoxifen. Isn't that something? Now that's coming from WebMD. That's not an alternative therapy publication. Just eating flaxseed muffins were found to be comparable to the drug tamoxifen. Now, the women who were in first or second stage breast cancer, who switched to a plant-based diet and exercise, cut their death risk by 50%. By 50%. That's a pretty significant science, don't you think? Men. Well, right here, let me stop and look at colon cancer. And this is from the Journal of the American Medical Association. Stage 3 colon cancer. Men who switched to a plant-based diet with stage 3 colon cancer had a 300% reduction in recurrence. And we're not even talking about sunshine and trusting the Creator and exercise and water. We're not even talking about the therapeutic application of those things. We're just talking about the plant-based diet. Think about when you combine it all in a proficient program. It's a plant-based diet. Now, alternative therapies going head-to-head with conventional medicine. Head-to-head. 100% plant-based diet, no conventional treatments. Stage 2 melanoma, 82% alive after 5 years. Typical diet, conventional treatment, stage 2 melanoma, 39% alive after 5 years. Which one wins out? Conventional or alternative? In other words, statistically speaking, you have a far greater chance of being alive in 5 years by following this than following this. Right? Here we have again, head-to-head. 100% plant-based diet, no conventional treatment, stage 4 melanoma, 39% alive after 4 years. Typical diet, conventional treatment, stage 4 melanoma, 6% alive after 4 years. These are the two going head to head. Alternative medicine versus conventional medicine. So let me ask you a question. Which medicine, when it comes to disease, now remember we talked about when it comes to trauma, and in certain cases when surgery is necessary, it's just some cases it's necessary. Conventional medicine, when it comes to accidents and trauma, is the best in the world. But when it comes to treating diseases, chronic diseases, alternative medicine is the best in the world. The studies show it. Malignant melanoma, stages 1 and 2, adopted a 100% plant-based diet, 100% survival after 5 years. Malignant melanoma, stage 3, adopted a 100% plant-based diet, 71% survival after 5 years. We're dealing with stages 1 and 2 here and stage 3 there, right? Malignant melanoma, stage 4, adopted a 100% plant-based diet, 39% survival after 5 years. There we go, men. Prostate cancer. This is very significant. Rejected conventional treatment and adopted a 100% plant-based diet, all alive after 19 years. Prostate cancer. Median survival time with conventional treatments and typical diet, dead in 6 years. Both of these are from the American College of Nutrition. Your strongest carcinogen, according to science, is the protein of meat. Dead animals. That's the strongest carcinogen. This is why if you have cancer, or if you have a loved one that has cancer, if you want them to be healed, they must rid their diet of all flesh. Not only does that go for cancer, but it goes for, and you know, it's interesting. I tell people when they come, they say, oh, you know, this. Well, I say, you know, if you're not willing to do this, and this, I can't help you. I can't. You're wasting your money and my time. Because it's not going to happen. Because we can't undercut natural laws. And these laws they're like the law of gravity. You know, you can't oppose the law of gravity forever. The same way the Creator has put natural laws in place, so there are also physical laws in place. And when we use and follow those physical laws to our benefit, when it comes to health, we will be the beneficiaries. If we refuse to follow them, then we have to suffer the penalties. And so, scientifically speaking even, this is your strongest carcinogen. Carcinogen means the agent that causes cancer. Now here's one of my favorite books called The China Study by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. This book, he's from Cornell University, the most comprehensive study on nutrition ever conducted. The most comprehensive study on nutrition ever conducted. And when they first did the study, there was a study over in I think in the 70s. They did a study in India. And in India, they thought they were trying to find something to reduce the rate of liver cancer. So they thought if we give more protein, more animal protein, it would reduce the rate of liver cancer. And when they did the study, I know today to us that may sound strange, but you know back then it didn't seem strange. And so they found in the study that not only did it not cut back on the incidence of liver cancer, but it increased the incidence of liver cancer. So then they began to change. So some years later, Dr. Campbell came along and he said, you know what? He read the study and some other studies, And this study, I mean, it's the longest study done on nutrition in known human history. And when you find out the results, he came to one conclusion. And when he started, he was like, he said he started with a lot of preconceived notions. But he was honest enough to follow where the evidence led. And so they found when they fed 20% animal protein diet to these mice, and here you can even see the tumors, right? 20% animal protein, 100% of them died. First, they injected them with what's called an aflatoxin, or a cancer-causing agent. And this is the way that this works. And I'll go into a little bit more. But we all come into contact with carcinogens in the environment. You can say those carcinogens are the seeds of cancer. As I said earlier, we all have cancer cells in our body. It's just that our immune system destroys it. But when you want to fertilize that seed, all you have to do is eat animal protein. And once you fertilize that seed with animal protein, you are preparing the soil, if you will, the biological terrain of your body to spring up and to grow and to produce cancer, more cancer cells. When they were fed 5% animal protein in their diet, none developed cancer. Now, we here in our society, we need to eat a lot of animal protein. You need to be strong, and you need to eat this, and you need to eat that. But when you look at the reality of it, all of that protein is very detrimental to your body. In fact, if you eat a lot of protein, especially ladies who suffer a lot from osteoporosis, when you eat excess protein, it causes calcium to be passed out through your urine. Excess calcium. And so now you end up with a calcium deficiency from eating all of that protein. Dr. Campbell found that you could actually turn off cancer and turn it on by the levels of protein that you put in your body. That's how powerful adding protein or taking it away is. It's like turning on the light switch, he said. Then he found that dairy protein was the most aggressive cancer promoter. So now, say you get a situation where you have, and especially casein and this dairy protein. And it's funny, even if you eat vegan cheese, you have to be careful, or you eat soy cheese. Read the labels carefully, because many of them, unless it says vegan, they will have casein in it. And casein, he found, was one of the number one things that help promote cancer cells in dairy products. And so here you have the most extensive study ever conducted in known history on nutrition by a man who's, he's just a scientist. But these are the things that he found in this book, The China Study. "20% of vegetable protein, you won't develop cancer. 20% of animal protein, it's a good chance you're going to develop cancer. Because remember, in the studies, 100% of the mice that they gave 20% animal protein, all 100% developed cancer. Not half, not a few, all of them. And the ones that they didn't give it, none of them. Now, let's go into a little bit of why it occurs this way. The cancer cell has around it a coating of protein. And therefore, it is invisible to your immune system. is hiding. So here we have the cancer cell, here we have the protein coating. So your immune system now can't detect that this is a foreign cell. So here you have your pancreas. And when you eat flesh or protein, animal protein, these two enzymes are used to break it down. And these enzymes are produced by your pancreas. Now, these enzymes are also the only ones that can break down this protein force field around the cancer cell. So what does all that have to do with cancer? Well, when you eat a large amount of animal protein, all of those enzymes are busy or consumed breaking down the animal protein, and the cancer cells are left to go about and wreak havoc into the body because you have no enzymes left to get over and take care of the intruders. Now, there are also some other reasons that, that apply. For instance, there are some enzymes also in the liver that can convert animal proteins to cancer cells. And so this is just one of the elements, or one of the ways in which the body is hindered when we eat animal protein. Now, if you have enough of these enzymes available, they can wipe out that protein coating, and now the cancer cell becomes visible. And now your immune system can see it and attack it and stop cancer cells from proliferating. This is why when they did the studies, they were able to conclude, amongst other things, that it's so very important if you want to keep yourself from getting cancer. Now, this same thing applies in diabetes, but I'm not going to go into that because Dr. Morgan's going to deal with that, I think, tomorrow night. But in most cases, if you radically change your diet, you can get rid of that diabetes in a couple of weeks to a month. You can't go back to eating foolishly, but you can get rid of it relatively fast, and you have to keep eating healthily. But the point is, I was giving a seminar one time, and we were talking about this, and there was a person who was a diabetic in the crowd, and we were talking about, making those changes. And they raised their hand and they asked, so you're saying that if I make this change and I eat this way, I have to eat this way for the rest of my life? Well, really, you don't have to do anything, right? But let me put it this way. You have a choice. You can stay on the insulin for the rest of your life, because you will have to stay on it for the rest of your life. Or you can change your diet and start exercising, and you can do that for the rest of your life. Either way, you're going to have to do one or the other for the rest of your life. So if it were me, I would choose the diet and the exercise, because I'm saving money, I'm feeling better, and I'm not going through the other side effects of the insulin, because inevitably you're going to get something else because of the insulin. It's going to happen. Because in the event we didn't know, drugs don't cure disease. They simply allow you to maintain They simply allow you to maintain until you die. And, you know, my philosophy is any disease, if it's the Creator's will, can be healed if given the right atmosphere. And one thing that I have to also point out with regard to cancer, or any disease, but especially cancer, is that you must not entertain negative emotions. Negative emotions can render your immune system almost totally ineffective. Negative emotions, it's been shown in science. Negative emotions, as well as fear, anger, distrust, anxiety. You know, you can put a person on the best program, the best cancer program there is. And if they're fretful and they're worried and they don't believe in what they're doing, guess what? There's a good chance they're not going to live. Because there is a mind-body connection. And when you stress, say you have the thymus gland here, which is a big producer of white blood cells, or it plays a role in the production and sending out of white blood cells. When you stress, it shrinks. And when it shrinks, it cuts back on the ability it has to send out white blood cells. And with your white blood cell, with the body's ability or disability to produce white blood cells, your immune system, or the proficiency of your immune system, goes down. This is the problem with chemotherapy. It wipes out the immune system. You need your immune system, except in diseases that are what I call autoimmune diseases, when the immune system is overreacting. And even then, it's where the body becomes confused and the immune system is attacking itself, or is attacking the body. From my perspective, looking at that, I'm saying, okay, if the immune system was put in the body to protect it, and all of a sudden it's attacking the body and whatever disease may be, autoimmune disease, MS for instance, what that would tell me is that the body is in a state of confusion. And the body has to communicate. And in order for it to communicate, it needs nutrients and vitamins, and all these things for its lines of communication. When those lines of communication are cut, say I'm deficient in whatever, and over time those lines of communication are cut, my body becomes confused. Now my body is confused, my immune system, it doesn't know what to do, so now it's attacking itself. Autoimmune disease. So from my perspective, okay, the first thing to do is we have to get the body back in line. We have to get the body, find why is the body confused. And that can be from a number of causes. But, you know, and autoimmune diseases are sometimes some of the toughest ones to deal with. But your chances when you go natural are far greater. Like we've seen the studies, and this is just cancer. We haven't even looked at some of the other studies. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of studies. Remember, we looked at the first night. We looked at some of the studies with regard to the medications. Remember, and I mean, it was amazing. It was amazing at what the studies show. And so, with regard to cancer, there are many types, many kinds, and you alter, you do things a little different here or there based upon the person, based upon the cancer. But there's some things you're going to always do, like I said earlier. And we've talked about the laws of health. We've talked about, like tonight, we didn't even hit on, like we did the other night, we found out how beneficial sunlight is for cancer, right? We find out how beneficial exercise is for cancer. We looked at studies that show, exercise flash your chances of cancer by this much. They had I read a study recently. They were talking about how effective broccoli is for cancer. See, but what we have to be careful is not to get into a mindset, what we call the magic bullet mindset. The magic bullet mindset is say, okay, broccoli is good for cancer, all right? So I'm not going to exercise. I'm not going to drink water. I'm going to keep eating badly, but I'm going to go and eat broccoli. And I'm going to think that that's going to effectively reduce my chances of getting cancer. It's not going to happen. You have to take the entire package. The sunshine, the trust in the Creator, the exercise, the water, the fresh air, the rest, the diet, and the temperance or self-control. All of those, and then when you apply them therapeutically, you will find that your benefit will be great. And you will find that if you're brought into a situation to where you go to your doctor and he or she tells you, you have cancer, and you have X amount of time to live, or you have stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3 or stage 4. And many times, you have to remember, people, it's easy for us if we haven't been told that to say, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But when you're put in that situation, and people are, these doctors, we've been taught to look upon them as, authorities. And they are to some degree. But when you go to your doctor who is highly educated and he's been a doctor or physician for 30 years and he says, you need to take chemotherapy. Again, doctors in general are not bad people. But the fact of the matter is they don't know everything. Nobody does. And so what you have to do is you have to look at the situation. Just I was talking to a friend, a nurse, the other day, just to give you an example. She called me maybe last year. And she's a nurse now. So she worked with the doctors all the time. She said, look, I'm at the hospital. She said, I've been having very, very bad pains. The doctor says it's my gallbladder. He says he wants to take it out. She says, he's got me convinced that I need to be on the table, in a few minutes. She said, what do you think I should do? I said, I recommend that you not do it. She said, okay, I'm going to check myself out. She checked out of the hospital, gave her a gallbladder program. She followed the program. It's important, usually when you tell people to follow the program, and they say it didn't work, and you say, did you follow the program? Yes. And then when you start asking questions, they didn't follow the program. You must follow the program exactly the way that it's written. Every step is there for a reason. She followed the program exactly the way that it was written. And it prevented her having a $30,000 operation. The stones that she passed, she took them back to the surgeon, and she says, she didn't tell him what, she says, hey, what are these? She says, oh, those are the things we take out of gallbladders. Gallstones. So there is great benefit in following these natural steps. And so what has happened is that because of a lot of the marketing money of the pharmaceutical companies and, and the AMA and some of the, I didn't even have a chance to go into some of the things that to help you kind of see more clearly why it is that alternative medicine is not regarded. It's becoming more and more and more and more now. But we didn't talk about Huxley, who he came up with a cancer cure, and the problem they had with Huxley, he was a naturopathic doctor, but he was an oil man, so he had really deep pockets. He's like a multimillionaire. So the problem they had with him was because he had so much money to where they just couldn't, just push him around. And so he developed a cancer cure, based on the concentration of certain herbs. And it got to the point where he and the American Medical Association, it was just a fight, back and forth, back and forth. They called him a quack. He told them they didn't understand medicine. They knew nothing. They went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It got to the point that it ended up going all the way to the courts, and a federal judge, after looking at all of the evidence, he ruled that Hoxie's therapies were comparable in their efficacy to chemotherapy and radiation. And it ended up going all the way. It's even in the congressional record. It just kept going up, 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 up. And again, as I said earlier, we have been made to believe that natural medicine is somehow unscientific. The fact of the matter is, it's very scientific. It's very, very effective when done correctly. And again, like I said earlier, there are some cases, where you need allopathic medicine. And most of the time, though, you'll do just well if you follow what we've talked about. Are there any questions? On the prostate cancer? Well, it's basically with prostate cancer, and I'll hit on it more Sabbath afternoon when we hit the men's issues. But prostate cancer is pretty much like any other cancer. It has some differences, but basically you're going to do the same basically for any cancer. Now, when you want to zero in on the prostate, there's some things with the prostate that men need to do. There any kids? Men, excess sexual activity is a no-no. Men, and they don't tell you this, but excess sexual activity, be careful riding. I don't know, you may not do this, but for anyone who may, riding bikes, of course, doing the normal things, not exercising, Now, black men have the highest incidence of prostate cancer in the world. And black men love to eat beef. And also, there's some other areas, but I hit more on the prostate cancer Sabbath afternoon when we do men's issues. And type 1 and type 2. Type 2 is the one that is the question was, are there two types of diabetes? Type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is considered, type 2 is what most people have. I think about 90%, 95% of the cases are type 2, which is, type 2 diabetes is basically a diet disease. Eating bad, not exercising. Type 1 is generally more difficult to deal with. It's where, sometimes type 1 can be caused by viruses destroying the cell of the pancreas. Where type 2, and again, you can cross over, but to make a long story short, yes, I don't want to get too much, but because tomorrow night, Dr. Morgan is going to deal with diabetes. Yeah, anything that comes from an animal, anything that is animal protein, because we produce cholesterol. Our liver produces cholesterol, right? And we hear about LDL and HDL cholesterol, and we talked about that. The body does need it, so the body produces it. But we don't need any extra cholesterol from other animals. And not only the cholesterol, but other things that come with it. And so when we talk about it, it's I don't know of any chronic disease that can be reversed without a person going on a plant-based diet. I really don't. when it comes to chronic diseases, I don't know of any that can be reversed. Because if you look at it, you have to look at pretty much all of them from the perspective of the acidity of the body. If that pH balance is not where it's supposed to be, you can't have health. Because let me give you a good example. Many times we go and we get a blood test, right? And the blood test it shows the problem after it's already occurred. And in some cases, say for instance, you go and you get a blood test and it shows that your calcium level is where it should be. That may not be true, because the body may see that it's deficient and it will pull that calcium from the bones into the blood. But when they do the blood test, you say, oh, my calcium is great. So a more accurate testing would be early on would be pH. And once you see that your pH is in the acid area, it needs to get out of that acid area into an alkaline area, a little bit more alkaline than acid. I think the average blood alkaline is about 7.35, somewhere in that area. And you can know early on if that pH balance is out, and I would suggest you do it. Say for instance, you buy some pH strips and do it for maybe a couple of times a day, 2 or 3 times a day for a week, and take the average. And if the average is a little bit more alkaline, 7.35 roughly in that area, then your body is pretty much where it wants to be. But if it's lingering down there in that acid area, if it stays in that acid area long enough, you can be sure it's going to be a matter of time before you're going to be headed to the doctor with some issue. And so this is why I said earlier, one of the major problems with animal-based foods is that they're very acidic to the body. They raise the acid level up, and thereby cause the alkaline level to be thrown off, and it creates an acid system and where disease can proliferate. And when that happens, you have problems.
Isn't there a certain vitamin or mineral that can only be obtained from animal foods that is essential to human health?
No. The question was, isn't there a certain vitamin or mineral that can only be obtained by animal foods and that's essential to human health? And we have, anyone knows how many amino acids we have in our body? About 23, right? 23, 24? Some are called essential, some are called non-essential, right? They're all actually essential. The non-essential ones are called non-essential because we have to get them from outside sources. And like for instance, in lines with what she asked, say for instance, an animal eats something, and okay, let's say take a cow for instance. He eats, what did he eat? Grass. And he gets nutrients, but we eat the cow to get the nutrients, or we eat the chicken or whatever it is that we eat to get the nutrients. Now, it's interesting that you will find that some vegetarians will be found to be B12 deficient. The fact of the matter is there are lots and lots of vegetables. If you eat a varied amount of vegetables, that you will get your B12. And so, in other words, it's very important, and that's fruits and vegetables. So it's very important, again, just because you're a vegetarian or vegan, don't eat the same things over and over. Your diet has to be varied. And when you eat a varied diet of nuts, grains, fruits, and vegetables, you will get all of the nutrients that you need. I have been on a plant-based diet since 1992, I think, 92. and no deficiencies that I know of, any major deficiencies. And so, but the key is trying to eat a varied diet and to try and stay away from those things. Now, if you eat something, you know, like he was saying last night, you know, he had some chips or he ate a piece of candy, here or there is not going to kill you. You know, the thing is not to make it a habit, and the thing is to consistently, you know, prepare to eat healthy and overall, because, you know, not only is it about quality or quantity of life, it's also about quality. And who wants to be, you know, 80 and 90 years old and you loaded down with so many ailments that you can't function? We have time for one more question. Oh, the question is, she says she knows that there are different types of herbs that help cancer, and she noticed that I didn't speak on them. And the reason I didn't was because I knew I wasn't going to have the time, and part of the reason for this series is to kind of give lay a good foundation. But yeah, there are many herbs that are very good, and supplements that are very good. We mentioned chaparral. Red clover, chaparral, red clover. Anything that cleanses the blood, any herb that cleanses the blood is good for cancer. And there are many other ones that you can use in combination. And so the reason I said that is because the reason I want to cover this is because this is your foundation. If you take cancer herbs and you don't follow this foundation, it's not going to work for you. It has to be an entire program. And so this is your backbone. This is your foundation. And if you have that as your foundation, the sunshine, the trust in the Creator, the fresh air, the water, the plant-based diet, and then if you integrate powerful herbs. I mean, you have some herbs that are really, really powerful. And some of them you have to use with great discernment. But if you do that, in fact, we saw one earlier tonight, didn't we? When we did the hands-on. Then we see one that was very, very powerful. We call it God's nitroglycerin. Last one. Okay, that will end the program. Thank you for coming out, and may God bless.
Plus exercise multiplies our immune system. The immune system must be kept up to par. So let us remember that. I'd also like us to remember that Sunday is our expo, which will culminate everything that we've been going over this week, and it will be on the 29th between the hours of 12 and 5. So at this time, I'd like to just offer a word of prayer as we part from tonight. May we bow our heads. Loving Father, once again, we thank you so much for this information that we are getting. It is indeed priceless. I pray, Heavenly Father, that you will take each and every one of us safely home and bring us back once again at the appointed time on tomorrow evening, where we can be once more educated to help protect these bodies that you so graciously gave. Amen.